For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to move objects within your scene that is easy to understand using multiple viewports. So when you begin to create your objects in Clara, they all sort of build on top of each other on the 0, 0, 0 axis. So as you create objects, the first thing I would recommend is moving them off of that axis, so any new object that you create is a little bit easier to grab. Once you have your objects within your scene that you want to manipulate, and let's say this is on a larger plane. So I have my plane or my surface that I want to arrange my objects on, but let's say I'm having a bit of a hard time sort of really figuring out where exactly these objects should go. What you'll want to do is, instead of just working within one viewport, and right now I'm in the perspective viewport, you'll want to navigate to the 4-panel view. In order to do that, if when you open Clara it's giving you one viewport, you'll want to go to the right hand side, and there should be 2 arrows that are pointing in towards each other. If you click on those arrows, it'll switch from just looking at one view to looking at 4 views. The default for Clara is to have 2 perspective views on top, and then a top view and a front view. So for navigating objects and moving objects within the scene, what I would recommend doing is selecting your object, either in a view that you're comfortable with using, and then working with the top view or the front view to begin to maneuver those objects within your scene. So if I look at this top view, and I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, I can sort of see the general orientation of where each object is. So I can select an object in this scene, in this view, and then begin to really arrange it only on the X and Z axis. I can move my objects either by selecting one arrow that becomes highlighted and moving it just along one axis, or if I hover where these 2 arrows meet and activate both arrows so that they're yellow, I can click and hold and have a much more fluid rotation to those objects. If you want to be very specific about how high your objects are in the scene, instead of using the top view, navigate over to your front view, and your front view will show you each object in basically a side profile. So here I can see that most of my objects are sitting right on top of the plane. Some of them are floating by a few inches. So here I can, in my front view, I can more easily determine the specific height for my objects and where I want them placed relative to each other. If you find that the grid that Clara generates is not helpful or useful in being able to arrange your objects, you can hide your grid. If you click on the plus sign in any viewport corner, you'll notice that there's a show grid option that's already selected. So I can click on show grid and it will hide that grid from my view. And this may make it easier to sort of just see your objects relative to each other and not have to worry about, or not let the grid sort of visually get in the way of understanding the relationship between your objects. Finally, the last way to move an object, if you wanted to be very specific about its location, is instead of using the Move tool, when you select your object, you can go to the Properties panel, and you can go to Transform, and this will show you the exact coordinates of your object in space. So if I wanted something to be back on that 0, 0 axis, I could type that into there and it'll move the object accordingly. In addition, if I wanted it to be 5 units off from the x-axis, I can type that in there and see how it is arranged. So anything that I do with the arrows, I can always go back and fix in the transform panel.